For over 2,000 years, one of the most unsettling mysteries of human history has endured. Why have the Jewish people been the target of such relentless hatred? Across civilizations, empires, and centuries, Jews have been cast as outsiders, conspirators, scapegoats, and enemies of the state or faith. This hatred has adapted itself to different contexts, sometimes religious, sometimes racial, sometimes political or economic, yet always reappearing in new disguises. To understand this, we need to trace the story from the very beginning, to the ancient world, where the Jewish identity first took shape in opposition to the surrounding powers. In antiquity, the Jews were unique. While most societies of the ancient Near East were polytheistic, worshipping multiple gods that represented nature, fertility, or empire, the Jews clung to the radical belief in one God, an invisible, transcendent being who demanded exclusive loyalty. This idea of monotheism was revolutionary, but also deeply threatening to the empires around them. In Babylon, in Persia, in Greece, and especially in Rome, religion was tied to the state. To honor the gods of the empire was to prove loyalty to the empire itself. When the Jews refused to bow to idols, refused to sacrifice to the emperor, and maintained their Sabbath and dietary laws, they were not just seen as different, they were seen as subversive. To the Romans, this stubborn loyalty to their god above Caesar was defiance, bordering on treason. The Jewish revolts against Rome in the 1st and 2nd centuries only intensified these tensions. The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE and the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE spread Jews across the empire in a great diaspora. Wherever they settled, their customs set them apart. They became both admired for their discipline and despised for their refusal to assimilate. This separateness, combined with memories of Jewish resistance, hardened the image of Jews as an unyielding, difficult people. But the most decisive turning point came with the rise of Christianity. Christianity began as a Jewish sect, rooted in Jewish scriptures and traditions, yet as it spread through the Roman world, it quickly defined itself in contrast to Judaism. For early Christians, the refusal of the majority of Jews to accept Jesus as Messiah was not just a disagreement, it became proof of Jewish blindness, stubbornness, even guilt. Over time, the accusation grew heavier. Jews were not only seen as rejecting Christ, but as responsible for his death. This charge of deicide, killing God, became one of the most poisonous seeds of anti-Semitism. By the 4th century, when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, the consequences were enormous. Jews were tolerated, but only as a people marked by divine punishment. They were to wander, to survive, but never to thrive, living evidence, in the eyes of the Church, of what happens to those who reject Christ. This theological framework meant that hostility toward Jews was not just cultural, it was sanctified, justified, even commanded by divine will. During the Middle Ages, these ideas solidified into systemic discrimination. Jews were barred from many professions, excluded from guilds, and forbidden to own land. Ironically, these restrictions forced them into roles that made them both indispensable and despised, especially as moneylenders, since Christian doctrine forbade charging interest. Over time, resentment toward Jews as usurers grew, not because Jews created this role, but because society pushed them into it. Alongside economic resentment came the rise of vicious myths. The blood libel, accusing Jews of murdering Christian children to use their blood for rituals, spread through Europe. Jews were accused of poisoning wells during plagues, of desecrating the consecrated host, of conspiring with the devil himself. These myths often exploded into violence. Whole communities massacred during the Crusades, synagogues burned, and Jews expelled from England in 1290, from France in 1306 and 1394, and famously from Spain in 1492. After centuries of flourishing under both Muslim and Christian rule, everywhere they went, Jews carried with them both their traditions and the stigma imposed upon them. They were often granted temporary protection by kings or nobles, valued for their financial skills, only to be turned upon when convenient as scapegoats for famine, plague, or social unrest. The pattern repeated itself so consistently that Jewish history in the Middle Ages can be seen as a cycle of fragile tolerance followed by sudden catastrophe. By the late Middle Ages, Jews were both feared and despised, yet their survival baffled many. For Christians, who expected the Jewish people to vanish or convert, their continued existence was troubling. For rulers, Jews were useful but also dangerous. enriching economies but also provoking popular anger. And for the common people, Jews were the ultimate outsiders, always close enough to blame but never truly belonging. This is how, by the time Europe entered the Renaissance and the early modern period, the long shadow of anti-Semitism was already deeply rooted in the culture, politics, and religion of the West. Perhaps one of the most controversial of all the forbidden texts is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. This book, only partially preserved, offers a stunning perspective. Mary Magdalene is portrayed as one of Jesus' closest disciples, receiving secret revelations directly from him. She speaks of inner visions, the ascent of the soul, and a deeper spiritual understanding of salvation. But her authority was challenged by Peter and the other male disciples, sparking debates about her legitimacy. Imagine how different Christian history might have been if Mary Magdalene's Gospel had been included in the canon. Women could have held greater roles in the church, and the mystical inner journey of the soul might have stood alongside the external structure of faith. Perhaps this was precisely why the book was suppressed. It did not fit the narrative of a male-dominated church. Then there is the Gospel of Judas, discovered in the 1970s but only published in the early 2000s. This shocking text flips the traditional story of betrayal upside down. Instead of portraying Judas as the ultimate traitor, it suggests that he was Jesus' most trusted disciple, following a divine command to hand him over so that the crucifixion could fulfill God's plan. Such an idea radically redefines one of the central figures of Christianity. No longer the villain, Judas becomes the obedient servant of God's will. Understandably, this gospel was condemned and hidden, for it undermined centuries of teaching about good, evil, and betrayal. The Shepherd of Hermas is another fascinating text, once widely read by early Christians. It is filled with visions, parables, and moral lessons, offering guidance for living a righteous life. In fact, for a time, many Christians considered it as important as the Gospels themselves. Yet, eventually, it was excluded from the Bible. Why? Because it was seen as too new, written after the apostolic age, and therefore not considered divinely inspired in the same way. Still, the Shepherd gives us a glimpse into the struggles of early Christians, their fights to remain faithful, and their longing for forgiveness and renewal. The Proto-Evangelium of James tells a story almost entirely missing from the Bible: the childhood of Mary, the mother of Jesus. It describes her miraculous birth, her dedication to God at a young age, and details about her life before the angel Gabriel ever appeared to her. For many believers, this book gave Mary a richer backstory and emphasized her holiness. But critics argued it embellished the truth, adding myths and legends not found in Scripture, and so, it too was cast aside. Yet without it, we are left with gaps, with little knowledge of one of the most important figures in Christianity. Let's not forget the apocalyptic texts, which were especially controversial. The Apocalypse of Thomas, for instance, presents terrifying visions of the end of the world, with graphic depictions of cosmic destruction. It goes far beyond the Book of Revelation, offering details that would frighten believers and inspire endless speculation. The Church, already cautious with Revelation, could not allow another apocalypse to fuel chaos and fear. Similarly, the Apocalypse of Paul gives a guided tour of heaven and hell, describing in detail the punishments of sinners and the joys of the righteous. This book was extremely popular for centuries, even influencing medieval ideas of the afterlife, yet it too was eventually declared forbidden. The Book of the Secrets of Enoch, sometimes called to Enoch, adds even more mystery. It expands the story of Enoch, the man who walked with God and was taken. This book describes his journey through multiple levels of heaven, where he encounters angels, sees visions of creation, and learns divine secrets. Some of its descriptions even resemble modern ideas of space and the cosmos. But again, it was too mystical, too full of hidden knowledge, and it never made it into the canon. Taken together, these forbidden books form a kind of shadow Bible, a library of texts that reveal alternative perspectives on God, Jesus, angels, and humanity's destiny. Some emphasize mystical knowledge, others highlight forgotten voices, and many present a universe far stranger than what we see in the canonical scriptures. By excluding them, the Church narrowed the path of Christianity, creating a single, unified story. But the echoes of these texts remind us that faith was never so simple. It was a vibrant, diverse, and often controversial journey. And here's the truth: many of these books are available to us today. Though once hidden, They have resurfaced through archaeological discoveries, ancient manuscripts, and scholarly research. We can read them, study them, and imagine what it would have been like if they had been preserved all along. Perhaps they would have deepened our understanding of God's mysteries. Perhaps they would have divided the church beyond repair. Or perhaps they were always meant to remain in the shadows, waiting for the right time to reappear. As we close this journey through the forbidden books of the Bible, we are left with more questions than answers. What else is still hidden? What secrets lie buried beneath the sands, waiting to be discovered? And most importantly, how would your faith change if you learned that the story you thought was complete was only part of the truth? These forbidden books challenge us, they provoke us, and they inspire us to keep seeking, keep asking, and keep searching for the mysteries of God. So, if this exploration has opened your eyes and made you think differently, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. Together, we can continue to uncover the hidden histories, the lost scriptures, and the powerful truths that were once silenced. The journey has only begun because history is filled with secrets, and the Bible's forbidden books are just the first chapter.